the Honeybee Inn has always been a standout segment of Final Fantasy VII, whether we are discussing the original or the remake. In fact, it's quite apparent that Square elevated this scene tenfold the second time around, although until recently I never really gave it much thought as to what it meant. Why the bees? Why the dancing? Why would Cloud even do this? Interestingly enough, after stringing a few ideas together, I've actually come to find that the Honeybee Inn is actually quite genius. Now don't get me wrong, I always enjoyed this segment, both times around, but now I have found a newfound appreciation for it, and I look forward to sharing these ideas with all of you, and hopefully you will come away with a newfound appreciation for it. Ladies and gentlemen, sickos and normies, welcome back to the Landy Lodge, and as you can see, Final Fantasy VII is our topic of discussion today. So without further ado, let's dive into the symbolism and meaning behind the inclusion of the Honeybee Inn. Let's start by putting it this way. Cloud is the bee, and Aerith is the flower. In order to fully flesh out what I mean by this, let us first have a quick nature lesson about the relationship between bees, flowers, and their influence on the planet. The most important role the bees play in the grand scheme of Mother Nature is pollinating the flowers. This pollination ensures that plants reproduce, further enriching not just the flowers, but the trees and other plants and food as well. The flower and the bee have a mutualistic relationship where both parties benefit. This mutual benefit in turn becomes a harmony that enriches the rest of the planet as well. The further you fall down this rabbit hole, the more you come to find that the working relationship between flowers and bees is at the core of a lot of our planet's ecosystem, and it's the mutualistic relationship that allows harmony to sprout. Now, with that quick lesson, let's zoom in and see the overlap within the story of Final Fantasy VII. Let this be your warning. Spoilers for the original are on the way. Symbolically, it's quite apparent that Aerith represents the flower. Whether we look at her literally being the flower girl, her gifted flower doing its rounds in Sector 7, the flower bed in the church, needless to say, the symbolism here couldn't be more clear. As for Cloud, him representing the bee is the entire point for the Honeybee Inn's inclusion. Let's start by discussing the dance. The fact that Cloud had to perform a dance number is symbolically sound with this idea. Let's look at the Honeybee Inn like it's a giant beehive, which, to be honest, isn't much of a stretch at all. When a bee has located a good flower, the bee will return to the hive and communicate with other bees by way of dancing. Could this be a nod to the fact that the Wall Market Trio ended up coming around to help Cloud and Aerith in the end? They were all in attendance at the hive after all. If Aerith is our flower, does this scene qualify as pollination? Personally, I would say yes, and here is why. Why is this scene so important? Why is Aerith in awe of Cloud's actions here? Well, let's be honest. The dancing, the makeup, the dress, the whole thing is completely out of character for Cloud. This isn't something he would typically do willingly. That said, he's willing to put himself through all of this for one reason: to save Tifa. The key, however, is that even though Cloud loves Tifa, him putting himself through all of this at the end of the day is him keeping his promise to Tifa from all of those years ago, promising that if she was ever in danger, he would be there to save her, whatever it took. Cloud fighting in a tournament to save Tifa, very on brand for him. You might even be able to question if he had his own selfish motivations for that. But dancing and dressing up? There's no question this is Cloud doing anything he can to save Tifa. Now, reeling us back to the pollination, the reason why this leaves Aerith in awe is because it's proof of Cloud's ability to work in a mutualistic relationship. Not only that, but Aerith watching Cloud go to the fullest extent for a promise he made to Tifa must have flashed her back to the promises Zack made to her that he was unfortunately never able to fulfill. Given the nature of Aerith, especially here in Remake, I believe she always believed in Cloud. But I believe it's at this moment that Aerith really starts to double down and believe in him, and recognize his potential not only for our mutualistic relationship, but as a hero of the planet. Furthermore, if you wanted to go down the pollination route, it is Cloud that spurs Aerith into this journey where she leaves Sector 7, she leaves Midgar behind, and goes on this grand adventure that allows her to fulfill her destiny. Cloud in a sense being the catalyst for that whole journey taking place where Aerith becomes a guardian of the planet. That in itself right there could be seen as Cloud pollinating Aerith for her grand journey. Lastly, I want to bring us back to the nature of the relationship between the flower and the bee. Essentially, it's a beautiful model for how our planet and ecosystems work. All of life exists in a sort of harmony, where there are mutually beneficial relationships that allow everything to function as it does. This harmony, this flower and bee relationship at scale, is what keeps our planet alive and thriving. This is where Jenova comes in. Jenova is a virus that represents the opposite of the nature between the flower and the bees. Jenova does not give. Jenova does not work in a mutualistic relationship. Jenova only takes. She is a virus that wishes to consume the planet and use it for its own self-propagation. It does not wish to work with the planet in this sort of mutually beneficial way. In fact, it wishes to do the opposite. It only wishes to take and not give. Could this be what Aerith meant when she said,
"And you're wrong. Everything about you is wrong."
Everything about you is wrong. These are harsh words, well-deserved, but not to be taken lightly. As we know, Aerith is essentially our ambassador for the planet, while Sephiroth serves as our ambassador to Jenova. I believe this line is in reference to the fact that Sephiroth and Jenova's nature are not compatible with the nature of the planet. They wouldn't fit in. It would only take over, not collaborate. Glossing over the story of Final Fantasy VII about the planet and how it needs to be treated as a living organism. At the core of that living organism is a nature that is able to cooperate, collaborate, and mutually benefit from one another. It's that very spirit that keeps life alive on the planet. And if a virus like Jenova were to ever disrupt this balance, disrupt that harmony, it would spell doom for us all. So the honeybee inn, is it just a silly nod to the Playboy bunnies? Or is it actually a symbolic gesture about the nature of our planet? At the end of the day, as it stands, I leave that for you to decide, dearest viewer. Feel free to please drop into the comments below and let me know what you think, whether you agree or you disagree, because that is all I am going to have for all of you sickos and normies today. Thanks for stopping into the Landy Lodge. Be sure to like the video and subscribe. And if you want more Final Fantasy content, be sure to stick around the lodge or check out my Final Fantasy VII podcast, The Midgar Minute, on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, sickos and the normies, you all be good out there. Keep on crushing, and I will see you all next time.